The scent of old paper and freshly brewed coffee was Alara Vance's favorite perfume. It clung to her clothes, her hair even, she suspected, her very soul. Each morning, as she unlocked the heavy oak door of the bound page, the aroma greeted her like an old friend, a promise of stories, waiting to be discovered, new adventures tucked between familiar covers. Oakhaven was a town that breathed in rhythm with the seasons, and this particular autumn morning, it hummed with the crisp whisper of turning leaves. Golden light slanted through the tall windows of the bookstore, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, forgotten wishes. Alara moved with practiced grace through the narrow aisles, adjusting a stack of poetry, straightening a display of new releases, her heart a quiet drumbeat of contentment. She loved her bookstore. It was more than just a business. It was a sanctuary, a haven for dreamers and thinkers, a place where words came alive. She'd inherited it from her beloved grandmother, a woman who believed that every life was a story, and every story deserved a good beginning, a rich middle, and a satisfying, if not always perfect, end. Alara often wondered about her own story, sometimes feeling as though she was stuck in a beautifully written, but rather uneventful chapter. She was 28, perfectly content with her books and her small, cozy apartment above the shop, yet a tiny, persistent whisper in her heart hinted at a longing for something more, something unexpected. She tidied the display of local authors, her fingers tracing the worn spine of a collection of Oakhaven folklore. Her grandmother used to tell her these tales as a child, stories of hidden glades and ancient trees, of whispered promises under moonlit skies. Perhaps that was why Alara loved Oakhaven so fiercely. It felt steeped in magic, a gentle, everyday kind of magic that settled in the mist over the river and painted the sunsets in hues of apricot and rose. The bell above the door chimed, a cheerful announcement that broke her reverie. Alara looked up, a smile already forming on her lips, ready to greet Mrs. Gable, who always arrived precisely at 9:00 a.m. for her daily newspaper and a quick chat about the weather. But it wasn't Mrs. Gable. The man who stood in the doorway was a stranger to Oakhaven, or at least to Alara. He was tall, with broad shoulders encased in a charcoal gray wool coat, and dark hair that fell just so over his forehead, giving him an air of thoughtful disarray. His eyes, when they met hers across the quiet expanse of the store, were a startling shade of hazel, flecked with gold, and held a depth that made her pause. There was a faint stubble on his jaw, suggesting he'd risen early, or perhaps just hadn't bothered with a razor, adding to his slightly rugged, yet undeniably refined, appeal. He offered a small, hesitant smile that softened the seriousness in his gaze, and Alara felt a surprising warmth bloom in her chest. "Good morning," she said, her voice a little softer than usual. "Good morning," he replied, his voice a low, resonant baritone that sent a shiver down her spine. "I hope I'm not too early. I saw the light on." "Not at all. We open at 9. You're our first customer." She gestured vaguely around the shop. "Can I help you find anything?" He took a slow breath, as if savoring the air, the scent. "Just browsing for now. This place, it's lovely." He swept his gaze across the towering shelves, the cozy reading nooks, the latter leaning against the far wall. There was a genuine appreciation in his eyes that made Alara swell with pride. "Thank you. It's been in my family for generations." "I can tell," he murmured, his eyes lingering on a framed black and white photograph near the counter. Her grandmother, younger, with the same determined sparkle in her eyes, perched on a stool amid stacks of books. It has that lived-in, loved-in feel. He began to wander, his hands tucked into his pockets, moving with an unhurried grace that seemed to fit the quiet atmosphere of the bookstore. Alara watched him, a strange curiosity stirring within her. He stopped at the fiction section, then the history, his fingers brushing the spines of books, but never pulling one out. It was as if he was absorbing the essence of the place, rather than seeking a particular story. After a few minutes, he found himself in the back, near the small sun-drenched nook where Alara kept her antique and rare editions. He paused before a particular shelf, his expression unreadable. "Do you have any first editions of poetry?" he asked, without turning around. "A few," Alara replied, walking over. "Anything in particular you're looking for?" He finally turned and his gaze met hers again, direct and intense. Something by Yeats, perhaps, or Robert Frost. Ah, the classics, she said, a playful note entering her voice. We have a lovely collection of Frost's early works, and a very rare first edition of The Wild Swans at Cool by Yeats, though it's quite old and fragile. His eyes widened slightly. Yeats? Really? Ilara reached carefully for a slim, leather-bound volume from the top shelf. The cover was worn smooth, the gold lettering faded, but the delicate artistry of the binding was still evident. She held it out to him, her touch reverent. It was my grandmother's personal favorite. She always said it reminded her of the enduring beauty of things, even when they change. He took it from her, his fingers brushing hers, a fleeting touch that sent a surprising jolt through her. He held the book with the utmost care, as if it were spun glass. His thumb traced the title, then he opened it gently, inhaling the faint, sweet scent of aged paper. He didn't read, not really, just gazed at the delicate print, a thoughtful frown creasing his brow. Remarkable, he finally said, his voice hushed. This is truly special. It is, Ilara agreed, a soft smile gracing her lips. It's not for sale, I'm afraid. It's part of the shop's private collection, passed down through the family, but you're welcome to look at it here anytime. He looked up, a genuine smile now gracing his features, transforming his face, softening the edges. That's very kind of you, thank you. He closed the book gently and handed it back to her. My name is Reese, by the way, Reese Kincaid. Ilara Vance, she replied, feeling a warmth spread through her. It's a pleasure to meet you, Reese. Likewise, Ilara. He hesitated for a moment, then added, I'm new to Oakhaven, just moved here a few days ago, looking for a quiet place to write. A writer. Ilara's eyes lit up. How wonderful. We have a fantastic local writers group if you're interested. They meet here on Thursday evenings. He chuckled, a rich, warm sound. Maybe eventually. I'm a bit rusty, and still settling in, but thank you for the offer. He glanced around the bookstore again, a contemplative look on his face. This would be an ideal place to find inspiration, though. A dangerous place for my wallet, perhaps, but certainly inspiring. Ilara laughed. We aim to please, and to tempt. He spent another 10 minutes browsing, eventually selecting a new paperback edition of Gilead by Marilyn Robinson, a choice that pleased Ilara immensely. It was a beautiful, reflective novel, full of quiet wisdom. At the counter as she rang up his purchase, he said, This town feels welcoming. I've been looking for a place like this for a while. Oakhaven has a way of drawing people in, Ilara said, handing him his book in a small paper bag. It tends to hold on to them, too. He smiled, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. I can see why. He paid with cash, his fingers long and elegant, and then paused, as if gathering his thoughts. Thank you, Ilara, for the welcome and for showing me the Yeats. Anytime, Reese. Come back and visit us. I will, he promised, and then, with a final lingering look around the shop, he was gone, the bell chiming his departure, leaving Ilara with the lingering scent of old books and the faint, unexpected echo of his voice. Ilara leaned against the counter for a moment, letting out a soft sigh. Reese Kincaid, a writer. New to Oakhaven. His presence had been like a quiet ripple in the still waters of her morning, a gentle disturbance that left her feeling intrigued. She found herself replaying their conversation, the way his eyes had crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the reverence with which he'd held her grandmother's Yeats. She wasn't one to be easily flustered, but there was something about Reese that had unsettled her in the most pleasant way. It wasn't just his handsome features, though he was undeniably attractive. It was the quiet intensity in his gaze, the way he seemed to truly see the books, the appreciation in his voice. It felt rare, refreshing. Mrs. Gable arrived a few minutes later, bustling in with her usual cheerful chatter, effectively pulling Ilara back to her routine. Morning, dear. Lovely day, isn't it? Just the right nip in the air for a good cup of tea. It is, Mrs. Gable, Ilara replied, handing her the newspaper. And how are your hydrangeas doing? They chatted about the weather, local gossip, and Mrs. Gable's stubbornly wilting hydrangeas, but a small part of Ilara's mind kept drifting back to Reese. She wondered where he lived, what he was writing, what brought him to Oakhaven. The rest of the morning passed in a comfortable blur of customers, orders, and the satisfying rustle of turning pages. Alara helped a young student find a textbook for her literature class, discussed the merits of a new historical fiction novel with a regular, and even managed to shelve a fresh delivery of books. Yet, with every lull, her thoughts returned to the new writer in town. Lunchtime arrived and Alara brewed a fresh pot of tea and unwrapped the sandwich she'd made that morning. She sat in her favorite armchair in the back nook, surrounded by the quiet wisdom of centuries of authors. She picked up a copy of Gilead, the same book Rhys had bought, and opened it, her fingers brushing the smooth cover. She imagined him reading it, perhaps curled up in a new unfamiliar home, finding comfort in its gentle prose. The afternoon brought a steady stream of patrons, and the golden autumn light began to soften, casting long shadows across the floor. Just as Alara was contemplating closing up early to enjoy the sunset, the bell above the door chimed again. Her heart did an odd little flutter. It was Rhys. He stood in the doorway, a canvas bag slung over his shoulder, a sheepish smile on his face. "Forgive me for bothering you again, Alara," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I seem to have forgotten something." Alara frowned, looking around. "Did you leave something behind?" He walked towards the counter, reaching into his pocket. "No, not exactly. I was hoping you might have a recommendation. I've just finished Gilead, devoured it actually, and it was everything you said it would be, but now I'm left with that glorious empty feeling, you know." Alara laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. "I know it well, the book hangover." "Precisely," he agreed, his hazel eyes sparkling with amusement. "So, I'm back, hoping for another cure." "Well, you've come to the right place." Alara gestured towards the shelves. "What kind of cure are you looking for? Something similar or a complete change of pace?" "Something heartfelt, I think. Something that makes you think, but also makes you feel." He leaned against the counter, his gaze fixed on her. "You seem to have an intuitive sense for these things." "It's a perk of the job," she said, feeling a blush creep up her neck. She turned, walking towards the literary fiction section, her mind racing through titles. "Have you read anything by Kent Haruf? His Plainsong series has that same quiet beauty, that profound understanding of human connection." Rhys followed her, standing a respectful distance away. "I haven't. Tell me about it." Alara pulled out Plainsong, its cover depicting a desolate yet beautiful landscape. It's set in a small town in Colorado, very much like Oak Haven, in a way. It's about ordinary people, their struggles, their kindnesses, their resilience. It's woven with such tenderness, you feel like you know every character, every dusty road. He took the book from her, his fingers once again brushing hers. This time, the spark felt more pronounced, a warm current that lingered. "It sounds perfect." "It is," she affirmed, her voice a little breathy. "It's a book that stays with you, in the best possible way." He looked at the cover, then back at her. "Thank you, Alara. You really do have a gift for this." "It's just matching stories to people," she demurred, but his compliment warmed her. "More than that, I think. It's like you can see what someone needs, even before they know it themselves." His gaze was unnervingly perceptive, and Alara felt a flutter in her stomach. They talked for a while longer, not just about books, but about Oak Haven, about the changing leaves, about the surprising warmth of the autumn sun. Rhys told her he was renting a small cabin on the outskirts of town, near the river, a place he hoped would foster quiet contemplation. He didn't elaborate on why he needed quiet contemplation. And Alara didn't push. She simply listened, absorbing the gentle rhythm of his voice, the thoughtful pauses, the way his eyes would occasionally drift to a particularly interesting book, even as he spoke. "I used to write a lot," he confessed, looking out the window at the deepening twilight. "Fiction, but it's been a while. Life got complicated." He offered a wry, self-deprecating smile. "So I packed up everything and came here, hoping to find my way back to the words." Alara felt a pang of understanding. "It happens," she said softly. "Sometimes you need a change of scenery, a new perspective, to unlock what's inside." "Perhaps," he murmured, his gaze returning to her. "Or perhaps you just need the right kind of inspiration." The implication hung in the air between them, unspoken, yet palpable. Elara felt a blush rise to her cheeks again, and she cleared her throat, suddenly feeling a little shy. Well, Oak Haven is certainly full of stories, just waiting to be told. He picked up Plain Song and walked towards the counter. I'll take this then. And thank you again, for the recommendations and for the conversation. It's been very pleasant. My pleasure, Reese. She rang up the book, her fingers lingering slightly as she handed him the change. I hope it helps you find your words. I hope so too. He paused, then reached into his canvas bag. Actually, Elara, there's one more thing. He pulled out a small, beautifully bound journal, its cover a rich, dark green leather. I was looking for a new journal and I saw this one earlier. I completely forgot to pick it up. Elara took the journal. It was exquisite, handmade, with thick, creamy pages. This is a lovely choice. Are you going to use it for your new writing? That's the plan, he said, a hopeful glint in his eyes. A fresh start, a blank slate, maybe it'll inspire me. He paid for the journal, and then, instead of immediately leaving, he hesitated. Elara, would you consider having a cup of coffee with me sometime? Or tea, if that's more your speed. I'm still figuring out the best spots in town, and I'd appreciate a local's perspective. Elara's heart did another joyful leap. This was the unexpected whisper her heart had been longing for. I'd like that very much, Reese, she said, a genuine smile lighting up her face. I know just the place. Wonderful. He smiled, a genuine, relieved smile that made her breath catch. How about Saturday morning? Say, 10 o'clock? Saturday at 10 sounds perfect. Great. He looked around the cozy bookstore one last time, a thoughtful expression on his face. Thank you, Elara, for everything. You're welcome, Reese. With a final warm smile, he turned and left, the bell above the door chiming softly, a melody that felt different this time, imbued with a new promise. Elara watched him go, then leaned against the counter, a soft, contented sigh escaping her lips. The bookstore was quiet again, but the air felt charged, vibrant. She had a coffee date with a charming writer with kind eyes and a deep appreciation for old books. She picked up the Yeats volume, the one her grandmother had loved so dearly, and gently traced the faded gold lettering. The enduring beauty of things, even when they change. A new story, it seemed, was beginning to unfold in the quiet corners of Oak Haven, and Elara felt a thrilling sense of anticipation, a gentle whisper of something wonderful just around the bend. The air in the written word seemed to hum with a new frequency the following morning. Elara woke before her alarm, a lightness in her chest she hadn't felt in years. The memory of Liam's smile, the depth of his gaze, the quiet enthusiasm in his voice as he spoke of first editions, replayed in her mind like a cherished melody. Today was the day. Their coffee date. She moved through her morning ritual with an unusual grace, each task infused with a delicate sense of purpose. Choosing her clothes became an art, not a chore. She settled on a soft moss-green dress that brought out the flecks of gold in her hazel eyes, paired with a delicate silver necklace her grandmother had worn. She wanted to feel like herself, but perhaps a slightly brighter, more hopeful version. As she tied back her auburn hair with a simple ribbon, she caught her reflection in the antique mirror above her dresser. There was a sparkle there, a nascent joy that surprised her. It felt good, this gentle flutter of nerves and excitement. Downstairs, the bookstore was still quiet, the morning sun just beginning to stream through the front windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, forgotten wishes. The scent of old paper and brewing tea was her usual comfort, but today it seemed to mingle with something else, the faint, imaginary aroma of coffee from the daily grind, the anticipation of a shared moment. She opened the store, set out the open sign, and then found herself picking up the Yeats volume again. The words "The Lake Isle of Innisfree" seemed to hum under her fingertips. She closed her eyes, picturing Liam, his quiet intensity, and a smile touched her lips. This new story, she mused, felt like a poem already, unfolding line by gentle line. At precisely 11 o'clock, Elara walked the short distance to the daily grind. The quaint coffee shop, with its mismatched chairs and the comforting scent of roasted beans and cinnamon, was a familiar haven. But today it felt entirely new, charged with an invisible current. She pushed open the door, the bell above tinkling merrily, and her gaze immediately found him. Liam was seated at a small round table near the window, a book open beside his hand, but his eyes were lifted, scanning the room. The moment he saw her, a slow, warm smile spread across his face, crinkling the corners of his kind eyes. He rose immediately, a gesture of old-world charm that sent a delightful shiver down Alara's spine. "Alara," he said, his voice a rich, low murmur that was even more captivating outside the hushed confines of her bookstore. "You're here." "Liam," she replied, her voice a little breathier than she intended. She felt a blush creep up her neck, but his gaze was so open, so genuinely pleased, that any self-consciousness quickly faded. "Please sit," he gestured to the chair opposite him. "I hope I wasn't too early." "Not at all." Alara settled into the chair, her hands clasped lightly in her lap. "I was just looking forward to it." He chuckled, a soft, pleasant sound. "Me too. I confess, I've been here for a good 20 minutes pretending to read, but mostly just watching the world go by and anticipating." He pushed a menu towards her. "What can I get you?" "My treat." "Oh, you don't have to," she began, but he waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. It's the least I can do. Besides, I've already ordered us a couple of their famous lemon poppy seed muffins. They're excellent." Alara couldn't help but smile. "In that case, a simple latte, please, with almond milk." Liam caught the barista's eye, ordered, and then turned his full attention back to her. "So, Alara," he began, leaning forward slightly, his elbows resting on the table. "Tell me about your day so far. Did the bookstore yield any new treasures this morning?" They talked easily, the conversation flowing as naturally as the creek that wound through Oakhaven. They spoke of the rhythm of life in a small town, the gentle hum of community that was so different from the bustling city Liam had left behind. Alara found herself telling him about the quirky charm of Mrs. Gable, who always insisted on paying for her mysteries in pennies, and the local teenagers who gathered in the bookstore's cozy reading nook, lost in worlds beyond their screens. Liam, in turn, shared anecdotes about his move, the initial quiet shock of Oakhaven, and how quickly its gentle pace had begun to soothe something restless within him. "It's a strange thing," he mused, stirring his coffee. "For a writer, silence is often a necessity, but there's a difference between the quiet of a lonely apartment and the quiet of a town like Oakhaven, where the silence feels full, like it's pregnant with stories." "That's a beautiful way to put it," Alara said, genuinely touched. "I've always felt that way about old books. They're quiet, but they hold so many lives within them." Their conversation turned to books, of course, their shared passion lighting up the space around them. Liam confessed his particular fondness for magical realism, for stories that blurred the lines between the mundane and the miraculous. "There's a truth in those tales," he explained, "that reality often misses, the truth of feeling, of wonder." Alara nodded enthusiastically. "I agree. I've always loved how a well-told story can make you see the world anew, even if it's a world entirely of the author's creation. It's like a secret door opening in your mind." She found herself telling him about her grandmother, the woman who had instilled in her a deep love for literature and the enduring magic of the written word. She spoke of the bookstore not just as a business, but as a legacy, a living, breathing entity that held the whispers of generations. Liam listened with an intensity that made Alara feel truly seen. His eyes, she noticed, were not just kind but incredibly perceptive, missing nothing. He didn't interrupt, but offered small, encouraging nods, his head tilted slightly. When she finished, a comfortable silence settled between them, punctuated only by the gentle clatter of cups and the murmur of other patrons. "Your grandmother sounds like a remarkable woman," Liam finally said, his voice soft. "And I can see her spirit lives on, not just in the bookstore, but in you, Alara. That deep appreciation for beauty, for stories, for the magic in the everyday." His words warmed her to the core, a feeling both exhilarating and profoundly comforting. She felt a connection blossoming between them, not just intellectual, but something deeper, more resonant. It was as if their souls, like two ancient volumes, had found their perfect companion on a dusty shelf. As the morning wore on, they moved from books to their individual dreams. Liam spoke of his current writing project, a historical novel set in a forgotten corner of Ireland, weaving in elements of local folklore. He spoke of the meticulous research, the thrill of bringing characters to life, the quiet agony of staring at a blank page. Elara, in turn, shared her own dream of expanding the written word to include a small, community-run publishing press dedicated to preserving local histories and emerging Oakhaven voices. "It's a pipe dream, really," she admitted, stirring the last of her latte. "But I imagine it. Sometimes, late at night. Giving a voice to the stories that might otherwise be lost." Liam's eyes lit up. "A pipe dream? Elara? That's magnificent. Imagine, an entire town's history, its legends, bound in beautiful volumes, right there in your bookstore. It's not a pipe dream at all, it's an ambition, and a very noble one." He leaned back, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know, for my research, I often visit these tiny independent presses. There's a particular joy in holding a book knowing it was crafted with such care, by people who truly believe in the power of the word. You absolutely must pursue that." His enthusiasm was infectious, and Elara felt a surge of renewed hope. For so long, it had been a quiet fantasy, something she tucked away. But Liam's earnest encouragement made it feel suddenly tangible, a goal within reach. Before they knew it, nearly 2 hours had passed. The coffee shop had emptied and refilled. The sun had shifted, casting new patterns across the floor. Liam glanced at his watch, a faint regret clouding his expression. "I suppose," he said, "I should let you get back to your treasures, and I, to my own." He gestured vaguely to the manuscript waiting for him at home. Elara felt a pang of disappointment, but she nodded. "It was wonderful, Liam." He smiled, a genuine, heart-melting smile. "It truly was, Elara. More than wonderful. I haven't had a conversation like that in a very long time." He paused, then his gaze intensified. Would you be open to doing it again? Perhaps a walk through the Oakhaven Gardens this week? I hear they're particularly lovely this time of year." Elara's heart fluttered. "I would love that, Liam." "Excellent," he said, rising and pulling out her chair for her. "I'll stop by the bookstore tomorrow if that's all right, and we can firm up a time." "That would be perfect," she agreed, feeling a lightness in her step as she walked beside him to the door. As they stepped out into the bright Oakhaven sunshine, he paused. "Until tomorrow, Elara." "Until tomorrow, Liam. No." She walked back to the written word in a happy daze, the gentle breeze rustling the leaves overhead, the world around her seeming to hum with a secret joy. The coffee date had exceeded every quiet hope she'd harbored. Liam wasn't just charming and kind, he was thoughtful, intelligent, and possessed a deep, soulful understanding of the things she held most dear. He saw her, truly saw her, in a way few ever had. Back in her bookstore, the familiar scent of old paper felt even more comforting, more resonant. She ran her hand over the spine of a first edition, the leather warm beneath her fingertips. The enduring beauty of things indeed. A new story was not just beginning, it was unfolding with a captivating rhythm, a gentle melody that promised even more beautiful verses to come. The next day, true to his word, Liam appeared at the written word just before closing. Elara was perched on a rolling ladder, shelving a new shipment of historical fiction, when the bell above the door chimed. She looked down to see him standing there, a soft, comfortable smile on his face. He was wearing a simple navy sweater that made his eyes seem even bluer. "Just in time," he said, looking up at her. "I thought you might appreciate some assistance with those." He gestured to the stack of books beside her. Elara laughed. A genuine, joyful sound. "You're a mind reader, Liam. My arms are starting to ache." She carefully descended the ladder. "Come in, make yourself at home." He did, settling onto one of the plush armchairs in the reading nook while Elara finished sorting the remaining books. They chatted as she worked, the comfortable rhythm of their conversation picking up exactly where it had left off. He asked about her day, about any interesting customers, and she found herself recounting a humorous anecdote about a child who had tried to pay for a picture book with a handful of brightly colored pebbles. "So, the Oakhaven Gardens," Liam finally said, once Elara had shelved the last book and joined him in the nook. "How does Friday afternoon sound? Say, around 3 o'clock? The light will be lovely then." "Friday afternoon sounds perfect," Elara confirmed, her heart doing a little skip. I'll close the store early. No need to close early on my account, he said gently, but she shook her head. It's all right. Friday afternoons are usually quiet anyway. And besides, she smiled, I'm looking forward to it. He returned her smile, a warmth radiating from him that filled the cozy nook. Me too, Elara, more than you know. He paused, his gaze lingering on her. You know, this bookstore, it's quite enchanting. I find myself wanting to just sit here all day, soaking it in. You're welcome to any time, she offered a little shyly. I often have tea brewing, and there's always a quiet corner for writing, if you ever need a change of scenery from your own study. His eyes widened slightly. That's a tempting offer. Perhaps I'll take you up on that sometime. He looked around, taking in the towering shelves, the soft glow of the lamps, the quiet reverence of the space. It truly feels like a sanctuary, Elara. A place where stories come alive. They talked for another hour, not about a specific date, but simply because they enjoyed each other's company. Liam shared a particularly funny anecdote about a literary event he'd attended, and Elara found herself laughing freely, a sound she hadn't realized she'd held back for so long. She felt herself relaxing completely in his presence, a sense of ease that was both unfamiliar and deeply welcome. As the late afternoon sun began to cast long shadows through the front windows, Liam finally stood. I should let you close up, he said, though his reluctance was evident in his lingering gaze. But I'm glad I stopped by. Me too, Liam, Elara said, walking him to the door. Thank you for coming. He paused just before stepping out, turning to face her. Elara, he began, his voice soft. I was thinking about what you said yesterday, about your dream of starting a small press here. It truly is a remarkable idea. And I might even have a few connections if you ever decide to seriously pursue it. Her eyes widened. You do? He nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. My editor has a soft spot for independent presses, particularly those with a focus on local history and emerging voices. He might be able to offer some advice, or even point you towards resources. It's a long shot, of course, but it's worth considering. Elara felt a thrill course through her. Liam, that's incredibly kind of you to even suggest. I don't even know what to say. Don't say anything, he smiled warmly. Just think about it, and know that I'd be happy to help in any way I can. It sounds like a project close to your heart, and those are the ones worth fighting for. With another warm smile, he stepped out, leaving Elara standing in the doorway, the scent of fresh air and distant pine mixing with the comforting aroma of old books. His words resonated within her, a gentle echo of encouragement and belief. It wasn't just the promise of a second date that made her heart sing, but the quiet understanding he offered, the subtle ways he acknowledged her dreams and her passions. She closed the bookstore, the closed sign clicking into place, and walked back through the aisles, the soft lamplight illuminating the spines of countless stories. The Yeats volume seemed to gleam in the fading light. This new story, she realized, was not just about two people finding connection. It was about opening up to possibility, about finding someone who saw the best in her and gently, beautifully, encouraged her to reach for it. And as she turned out the lights, leaving the bookstore in a soft, expectant darkness, Elara knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her soul, that this was just the beginning. The next chapter, she felt, was already waiting, ready to unfold with even more wonder. Elara's walk home that night was unlike any she had taken before. The familiar streets of her quiet neighborhood, usually just a path from one point to another, now shimmered with an almost magical glow. The cool night air, the rustle of leaves in the ancient oak trees, the distant murmur of the city, everything felt heightened, infused with a new significance. She hugged her worn cardigan tighter, a smile playing on her lips, a deep, contented sigh escaping her. When she finally unlocked the door to her apartment above the bookstore, the silence that usually greeted her felt less like an absence and more like a gentle, waiting presence. She brewed a cup of chamomile tea, the warmth seeping into her hands, mirroring the warmth that had taken root in her heart. Sleep, when it finally came, was soft and dreamless, a peaceful surrender to the promise of a new day. The next morning, Elara woke not to her alarm, but to the gentle tapping of rain against her window. It was a soft, persistent rhythm, a soothing melody that seemed to underscore the quiet joy humming within her. She stretched, a languid, unhurried movement, her gaze drifting to the stack of books on her bedside table, and then, inevitably, to her phone. A small, expectant flutter stirred in her chest. And there it was. A single message, simple and profound. Good morning, Alara. The world feels a little brighter today. I hope yours does too, Leo. A genuine, unbidden laugh bubbled up from her. It was so perfectly him, understated, thoughtful, optimistic. She took a moment, savoring the feeling, before typing her reply. Good morning, Leo. It absolutely does. The rain outside seems to agree. She didn't have to wait long. Rainy days are perfect for stories. Perhaps we could write a new one together? Coffee, maybe? Or something more adventurous if you're game. Ilara's smile widened. Adventurous. She hadn't been adventurous in a long time. But with Leo, the word didn't feel daunting, but inviting. Coffee sounds like a wonderful start. When and where? They settled on a small independent coffee shop a few blocks from the bookstore, known for its mismatched chairs and excellent lattes, for later that afternoon. The anticipation that hummed beneath her skin was a pleasant kind of nervousness, a vibrant energy that made her movements feel lighter as she went about opening the bookstore. She found herself humming as she shelved new arrivals, straightened displays, and wiped down the counter. Even Mrs. Henderson, a notoriously discerning customer, commented on Ilara's particularly cheerful demeanor. You're positively glowing today, dear, Mrs. Henderson said, adjusting her spectacles as she browsed the poetry section. Must be a good book you've found. Ilara just smiled, a secret joy dancing in her eyes. Something like that, she murmured. When the time came, Ilara walked to the coffee shop, the rain having subsided to a gentle drizzle that misted the air. She spotted Leo immediately. He was sitting by the window, a book open on the table beside him, but his gaze was fixed on the street, a small, expectant smile on his face. He looked up, and his smile broadened, a warmth spreading through Ilara that chased away the damp chill of the afternoon. Ilara, he said, rising as she approached, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Right on time, as I suspected. Punctuality is a virtue, especially when good coffee is involved, she replied, her voice steady despite the quickening of her pulse. They settled into their seats, the clatter of cups and hushed conversations around them forming a gentle backdrop. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, a continuation of the easy rapport they'd established in the bookstore. They talked about books, of course. His current read was a historical fiction, hers a whimsical fantasy, but also about their favorite seasons. He loved autumn for its crisp air and changing colors. She loved spring for its promise of renewal, their childhood memories, and the simple things that brought them joy. I love the smell of old books, Ilara confessed, stirring her latte. It's like history whispering secrets. Leo nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. And new books, that fresh ink and paper smell, like possibilities waiting to be discovered. I think that's what drew me to architecture, in a way. The possibility of creating something new, something that lasts, that holds stories within its walls for generations. You're an architect? Ilara asked, a genuine curiosity sparking within her. She knew he was creative, but the specifics were new. He chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. Yes, though I often feel like I spend more time managing logistics and budgets than actually designing. But the moments I do get to create, those are the moments I live for. Imagining spaces where people will live, work, dream. It's like building a framework for their own stories. Ilara found herself captivated. That's beautiful, Leo, to think of it that way. Not just structures, but vessels for life. Exactly, he said, his eyes alight. And what about you, Ilara? Beyond the joy of running the written word, what other dreams do you hold close? She paused, considering. It wasn't a question she was often asked, and certainly not one she'd voiced aloud in a long time. I've always wanted to curate more community events at the bookstore, she admitted, a little shyly. Author readings, poetry nights, maybe even a storytelling circle for children. But it always feels like such a huge undertaking, and I worry about the logistics, the turnout. She trailed off, a hint of her usual reservation creeping in. Leo listened intently, a gentle smile on his face. Those sound wonderful, Ilara. Imagine the joy those events would bring to the neighborhood. And as for logistics and turnout, he leaned forward slightly, his voice soft but encouraging. That's just building, isn't it? Just a different kind of structure. You start with a strong foundation, a clear vision. He paused, then added, and I'd be happy to help if you ever wanted a sounding board, or even an extra pair of hands for setting up chairs. His offer wasn't a grand gesture, but a quiet, sincere one, and it touched Alara deeply. It wasn't just the offer of help, it was the way he spoke, as if her dreams were not just valid, but entirely achievable. He saw the potential, the finished building, where she only saw the blueprints and the potential for obstacles. That evening, as they walked back to the bookstore, the last vestiges of twilight painting the sky in hues of lavender and rose, Alara felt a lightness she hadn't realized she was missing. Their second date a few days later was a visit to a small, slightly quirky art gallery tucked away in an old brick building downtown. Alara found herself drawn to a series of vibrant, abstract paintings, while Leo lingered in front of a charcoal sketch of a city skyline at dusk. They moved through the gallery, their steps synchronized, their conversations a comfortable weave of observations and shared thoughts. He pointed out the subtle interplay of light and shadow in a landscape, while she noted the emotional resonance of a sculptor's use of negative space. You have a keen eye, Alara, Leo commented as they stood before a particularly evocative piece. You don't just see the art, you feel its story. And you, Leo, she replied, turning to him, her gaze soft. You see the structure, the intention, the hidden architecture within the art itself. Later, over a casual dinner at a bistro with checkered tablecloths and the scent of garlic in the air, their conversations delved a little deeper. He spoke of a challenging project he was working on, a historical renovation that required a delicate balance between preserving the past and adapting for the future. He spoke of the frustrations, but also the immense satisfaction of bringing an old building back to life. It's a bit like uncovering a forgotten story, isn't it? Alara mused, sipping her wine. Dusting off the pages, mending the tears, and letting its voice be heard again. Leo's eyes met hers, and a warmth spread through her. Exactly, Alara. You always seem to find the perfect analogy, the perfect words to capture a feeling. His praise was genuine, not flattering, and it made her feel seen in a way that was both comforting and exhilarating. She, in turn, found herself sharing more about her own past, about the quiet joy she found in her solitary life with her books, but also the occasional pang of loneliness, a yearning for someone to share the quiet moments with. She spoke of her parents, both academics who had instilled in her a deep love for learning and stories, but also a certain practicality that sometimes tempered her more whimsical inclinations. Sometimes, she admitted, looking down at her hands, I feel like I live more in the stories on my shelves than in the real world. Leo reached across the table, his hand gently covering hers. His touch was warm and reassuring. But Alara, he said, his voice soft, you're not just living in stories. You're building your own. And it's a beautiful one, and perhaps it's time to invite someone to share a chapter or two with you. His words, so simple yet so profound, resonated deep within her. They weren't a challenge, but an invitation, spoken with such tender understanding that it brought a prickle to her eyes. She squeezed his hand in return, a silent acknowledgement of the trust that was beginning to blossom between them. A few weeks later, Lara found herself facing one of those small, daunting challenges she'd mentioned. A rare first edition of a beloved classic, a book she had long dreamed of acquiring for her store, suddenly appeared on the market. It was an auction, and the price was steep. She had the funds, just barely, but the thought of such a significant investment, the risk involved, made her hesitate. She found herself talking to Leo about it one evening, as they shared a takeout dinner at her apartment above the bookstore, surrounded by the comforting scent of old paper and the soft glow of lamplight. It's a magnificent copy, she explained, showing him the online listing on her laptop. Perfect condition, signed by the author. It would be a centerpiece for the store, a real draw for collectors. She sighed, a small, frustrated sound. But it's a lot of money, and what if it doesn't sell? Leo studied the listing, then turned his gaze to Alara. Alara, he said gently, what does your gut tell you? Not your head with its spreadsheets and worries, but your heart, the one that lights up when you talk about stories and rare finds. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing the book on her shelf, imagining the delight of a customer discovering it. "My heart tells me it's meant to be here," she whispered. "It tells me it belongs in the written word." "Then there's your answer," Leo said, his voice firm but kind. "Sometimes, the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards. And if it doesn't sell immediately, it's still a beautiful piece of history, a testament to your passion, and an investment in the unique character of your store. It's not just a book, Alara, it's a statement about what the written word truly is." He paused, then added, with a twinkle in his eye, "Besides, I'm rather good at finding hidden value in old things. I have a feeling this book has a story yet to tell, even before it's read." His confidence, his unwavering belief in her vision, was exactly what she needed. It wasn't a dismissal of her concerns, but a gentle reframing, an encouragement to trust her own instincts. The next day, with a newfound resolve, Alara placed her bid. And to her immense delight, she won. When the magnificent book arrived a week later, carefully packaged and even more breathtaking in person, Alara couldn't wait to show Leo. He came over that evening, and together they carefully unboxed it, the silence in the apartment filled with a shared sense of reverence. He admired the intricate binding, the crispness of the pages, the elegant signature. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined," he murmured, his fingers tracing the gilded lettering. "A true treasure, Alara, and it belongs here, absolutely." She looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Leo," she said, her voice soft, "for seeing it with me, for encouraging me to reach for it." He met her gaze, his eyes warm and full of affection. "My pleasure, Alara. It's a joy to watch you shine." He reached out, gently cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing lightly over her skin. The touch was electric, tender, a silent conversation passing between them. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to respond, to meet him halfway. And she did. Their lips met in a soft, unhurried kiss, a whisper of a promise, a deepening of the connection that had been steadily growing between them. It was a kiss that tasted of quiet understanding, of shared dreams, and of a future unfolding, one beautiful chapter at a time. Over the next few weeks, their connection deepened with a beautiful, natural ease. They fell into a comfortable rhythm of seeing each other a few times a week, sometimes for dinner, sometimes for a quiet evening at her apartment, where they would read side by side on the sofa, sharing passages, or simply enjoying the companionable silence. Alara found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't thought possible, sharing her hopes, her small anxieties, and her whimsical observations about the world. And Leo, in turn, shared more of his own life, the challenges of his work, his quiet passion for photography, his occasional forays into baking, with varying degrees of success, he admitted with a laugh. One Saturday morning, Leo surprised her by showing up at the bookstore with a thermos of her favorite tea and a box of freshly baked pastries from a small bakery Hyde discovered. He spent the morning helping her reorganize a particularly unruly section of the store, his architectural eye for order proving surprisingly useful. He didn't just move books, he created flow, symmetry, and an intuitive sense of discovery. "You know," he said, stepping back to admire their handiwork in the history section, "this reminds me of designing a public space. How do you draw people in? How do you guide their journey, without them even realizing it?" Alara, leaning against a bookshelf, sipping her tea, looked at him with a mixture of affection and awe. "You really do see the world in blueprints and narratives, don't you?" He grinned, a charming boyish light in his eyes. "I suppose I do. And you, Alara, you fill those blueprints with the most wonderful stories." His presence in the bookstore felt entirely natural, as if he had always been a part of its quiet, literary world. Customers initially curious quickly warmed to his gentle demeanor and genuine interest in their literary pursuits. Even the notoriously gruff Mr. Abernathy, who only ever grunted acknowledgments, offered Leo a rare, almost smile after a brief discussion about ancient civilizations. Alara found herself blooming under his attentive gaze. She started experimenting more with her display windows, inspired by Leo's ideas about visual storytelling. She even began planning a small poetry night, feeling a surge of confidence she hadn't known she possessed. Leo was there every step of the way, offering practical advice on lighting and acoustics, and, more importantly, unwavering encouragement. One evening, after a particularly successful day at the bookstore, the rare first edition had sold to a delighted collector. Validating her decision, Leo took her hand as they walked through the soft twilight. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice thoughtful, "about something you said, about living in stories." Alara looked up at him, her heart thrumming gently. "I think," he continued, his gaze tender, "that you're not just living in stories, Alara. You're weaving them, and you're weaving a truly beautiful one right now, with every page you turn, every book you share, every dream you dare to reach for." He squeezed her hand gently. "And I feel incredibly lucky to be a part of it." His words settled over her like a warm, comforting blanket, a profound sense of peace blooming in her chest. She had always loved stories, had found solace and joy within their pages. But with Leo, she was realizing that the greatest story of all was the one she was living, the one they were building together, brick by gentle brick, word by heartfelt word. The future, once a hazy, distant concept, now shimmered with clear, vibrant colors, a canvas waiting for their shared brushstrokes. And as they walked hand in hand, the streetlights casting long, dancing shadows before them, Alara knew with a quiet certainty that their story was only just beginning to truly unfold. The quiet certainty settled deep within Alara, a warmth spreading through her chest that chased away the last vestiges of her solitary past. Their walks grew longer, their conversations deeper, each passing day an added chapter to the unfolding narrative of their lives. They discovered the intricate dance of their shared routines. Leo, an early riser, brewing coffee while Alara still lingered in the land of dreams, often waking to the gentle aroma and his soft hum from the kitchen. Alara, a night owl, would sometimes find Leo dozing on the sofa, a half-read garden design book resting on his chest, and she'd cover him with a blanket, stealing a moment to simply watch him, her heart swelling with an emotion so profound, it felt like a silent song. Leo, in turn, learned the sacred rhythm of Alara's writing. He'd bring her a cup of tea, leave a small, perfectly ripe plum on her desk, or simply sit quietly in the armchair across the room, reading one of Hare's treasured books, understanding without words that her mind was a world she needed to explore alone, yet knowing he was her anchor when she returned. He respected her need for space, a concept she hadn't realized she could share with another person without feeling encroached upon. With Leo, her solitude wasn't invaded. It was understood, valued, and gently complimented. One crisp Saturday morning, Leo took her hand, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Ready for an adventure, Alara?" She laughed, a bright, clear sound. "Always, with you." He led her through a winding path behind his small city house, past a neglected shed and a tangle of overgrown bushes. "My secret," he murmured, pushing aside a curtain of ivy. Alara gasped. Beyond the ivy was a hidden sanctuary, a miniature Eden. Raised beds overflowed with fragrant herbs and vibrant vegetables. A small pond reflected the sky, and a wooden bench nestled beneath a climbing rose, its petals just beginning to unfurl. It was a riot of controlled beauty, a testament to Leo's quiet passion, a world away from the bustling city streets. "Oh, Leo," she breathed, tracing the soft petals of a lavender bush. "It's magnificent, like a storybook garden." His smile was soft, vulnerable. "It's where I come to think, to create, to find my peace." He gestured to a small empty patch. "I was thinking, maybe a little corner for you? A reading nook perhaps with some jasmine for scent?" Alara felt a lump form in her throat. He wasn't just showing her his world, he was inviting her to plant roots there too. "I would love that, more than anything." She, in turn, began to share more of her own creative world. One evening, after a particularly challenging day of revisions, she tentatively handed him a manuscript. "It's a draft, my current project." Leo took it with reverence, his touch gentle. "May I?" "Of course," she whispered, her heart thrumming with a mixture of fear and excitement. She'd never let anyone read her work before it was published, not even close friends. This felt like bearing a piece of her soul. He settled onto the sofa, Alara curled up beside him, trying to appear nonchalant while secretly observing every flicker of his expression. He read slowly, deliberately, his brow furrowing in concentration, then softening into a thoughtful smile. He didn't offer immediate praise or criticism. Instead, he absorbed it, allowing the words to settle. When he finally looked up, his eyes were warm and full of admiration. "Elara, this is beautiful. The way you craft sentences, the depth of your characters, it's like stepping into another world. I can see it all." Her fears melted away, replaced by a profound sense of being seen, truly understood. "You really think so?" "I know so," he said, taking her hand and squeezing it gently. "You weave magic with words, just as I try to with plants." Their shared passions began to intertwine seamlessly. Leo would consult Elara on the names for new plant varieties he was cultivating, seeking her poetic flair. She, in turn, found inspiration for her stories in the vibrant life of his garden, the resilience of a tiny seedling pushing through the soil, the quiet wisdom of an ancient oak. They spent weekends at botanical gardens, Elara sketching ideas for new characters while Leo meticulously identified every species. They haunted antique bookstores, searching for forgotten botanical texts or rare first editions. Their worlds weren't just complementing each other. They were enriching each other, creating a tapestry more vibrant and intricate than either could have imagined alone. The concept of home began to shift for Elara. Her apartment, once her sanctuary, now felt quiet without Leo's presence. His house, once just Leo's place, started to feel like a second home, filled with the scent of earth and fresh herbs, and the quiet hum of his presence. The idea, unspoken at first, began to blossom between them. A desire for a shared space, a true home built for two. It was during a particularly rainy afternoon, curled on the sofa with a stack of books and a pot of tea, that Leo finally voiced it. "Elara," he began, his voice soft, "I've been thinking." She looked up from her book, a question in her eyes. "About us," he continued, tracing the lines on her hand. "About our future. I love having you here, more than I ever thought possible, and I know you love your place, your space, but..." He paused, searching for the right words. "Would you ever consider making this our home? Or finding a new one together? A place where we could truly build our garden, our library, our life?" Elara's heart fluttered. This was it. The next brick, the next word. Her old anxieties, the whispers of self-doubt that had always clung to her like morning mist, tried to surface. What if it doesn't work? What if I lose my independence? What if I can't write if I'm not alone? But then she looked at Leo, his eyes full of warmth and genuine affection, and those fears seemed flimsy, insubstantial. "Leo," she said, her voice a little shaky, I've been thinking about it too, more than you know." She took a deep breath. Yes, I would. I want to build our home with you." A wide smile spread across his face, radiating a joy that filled the room. He pulled her closer, his embrace warm and reassuring. "Our home," he murmured into her hair. "With a proper garden for me, and a dedicated writing room for you." Elara laughed, a sound of pure contentment. "And a library big enough for both our collections?" The search for their perfect home became a new shared adventure. They pored over listings, walked through countless open houses, debating the merits of sun-drenched kitchens and spacious backyards. Elara, with her eye for light and quiet corners, envisioned where her desk would go, where the books would live. Leo, with his practical understanding of soil and sunlight, assessed the potential for a thriving garden, imagining trellises and raised beds. It wasn't just about finding a house. It was about finding the canvas for their shared life, a place where their individual dreams could intertwine and flourish. They found it on the edge of the city, a charming older house with good bones, a generous patch of neglected land, and a bay window that overlooked a quiet, tree-lined street. It wasn't perfect. It needed work, imagination, and a lot of love. But it felt right. It felt like Ingmar's. The day they got the keys was a flurry of shared excitement. They stood in the empty living room, echoes bouncing off the bare walls, holding hands and dreaming aloud. Leo pointed to the backyard. "Imagine a rose arbor here, and a vegetable patch there, and maybe a small fountain." Elara gazed at the bay window. "And here, my desk, and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves along this wall. And, Leo added, pulling her close, a big, comfy sofa right here, for quiet evenings, reading together. They moved in gradually, a joyous chaos of boxes and unpacked treasures. Elara's books found their new home, spilling from boxes onto temporary shelves, already making the space feel lived in and loved. Leo's plants, carefully transplanted from his old garden, began to root in the new soil, promising vibrant life. They painted walls together, laughing as they splattered each other with paint, sharing takeout meals on the floor amidst the boxes. Each decision, from the color of the kitchen cabinets to the placement of a favorite armchair, was a conversation, a compromise, a deepening of their understanding of each other. One evening, after a particularly satisfying day of transforming the neglected backyard into the beginnings of a flourishing garden, they sat on their new porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. The air was cool and smelled of freshly turned earth and blooming jasmine. Elara leaned her head on Leo's shoulder, a profound sense of peace settling over her. "It feels like home, Leo," she murmured, even with all the boxes still unpacked. He tightened his arm around her. "It is home, Elara, because we're here together." He turned to face her, his eyes serious and tender. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden box. Elara's breath hitched. Her heart began to pound a gentle rhythm against her ribs. "Elara," he began, his voice a little husky with emotion, "you've opened my world in ways I never imagined. You've shown me that even the most beautiful garden needs a story, and that my story is so much richer with you in it." He opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a ring. Not a traditional diamond, but a delicate silver band, intricately carved with tiny leaves and a single luminous moonstone. "Will you, my dearest Elara, write the rest of our story with me? Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Elara's eyes, soft and warm. This wasn't just a proposal. It was a testament to everything they had built, everything they had become. It was the culmination of countless quiet moments, shared dreams, and unspoken understandings. It was the perfect blend of their two worlds, the natural beauty, the thoughtful artistry, the deep, abiding love. "Yes, Leo," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had always been meant for her. The moonstone shimmered, catching the last light of the setting sun, a tiny, glowing promise. He kissed her then, a long, tender kiss that spoke of devotion, of future, of forever. The wedding was, as Elara often described it, a living poem. They chose a beautiful arboretum, its ancient trees providing a natural cathedral. Elara wore a simple, elegant gown that flowed like the pages of a beloved book, adorned with delicate lace reminiscent of climbing vines. Her bouquet was a cascade of wildflowers and herbs, hand-picked by Leo from their own burgeoning garden. Leo, looking impossibly handsome in a tailored suit the color of moss, had designed every floral arrangement, each one a miniature masterpiece. They exchanged vows beneath a canopy of blossoming wisteria, their words heartfelt promises of enduring love, shared adventures, and unwavering support. Elara read a short, poignant passage she had written, a metaphor of roots intertwining and branches reaching for the same sun. Leo, with a shy smile, recited a poem he had discovered in one of Elara's antique books, a celebration of companionship and growth. Their friends and family, gathered around them, witnessed not just a ceremony, but the seamless blending of two beautiful souls, two distinct worlds now gloriously intertwined. The reception was held in a glass conservatory, filled with the scent of citrus blossoms and the soft glow of fairy lights, where they danced under the stars, their laughter echoing like music. Life settled into a rhythm of shared purpose and quiet joy. Elara's writing flourished in her sun-drenched study, her stories imbued with a new depth and warmth, inspired by the love that permeated her life. She often found herself smiling at the little details, the sound of Leo humming as he worked in the garden outside her window, the scent of fresh earth wafting in, a perfectly arranged sprig of rosemary left on her keyboard. Her characters, once so solitary, now found love, built homes, and discovered their own versions of shared happiness. Leo's landscape design business thrived, his unique blend of artistry and understanding of nature, earning him widespread acclaim. He often incorporated literary elements into his designs, creating reading gardens or storytellers' nooks, always with a nod to his beloved wife. He'd come home, smelling of soil and sunshine, eager to share the day's successes and challenges with Alara, finding solace in her insightful observations and gentle encouragement. Their garden became a living testament to their love, a place where books were read under the shade of a flourishing apple tree, where quiet conversations unfolded amidst fragrant roses, and where future dreams were whispered beneath a sky full of stars. They planted a tree for every anniversary, a symbolic gesture of their growing love, its roots deepening with each passing year. As years turned into decades, their love story deepened, evolving with grace and quiet strength. They faced the inevitable challenges of life, small setbacks, moments of doubt, the gentle ebb and flow of everyday existence. But always, they faced them together, hand in hand, their bond a constant, unwavering light. They learned to read each other's unspoken thoughts, to anticipate needs, to offer comfort without asking. Their laughter filled their home, their quiet companionship a cherished balm. One evening, many years later, Alara sat on the porch swing, now weathered and softened by time, watching Leo tend to a particularly stubborn patch of weeds in their magnificent garden. His hair was streaked with silver, his movements a little slower, but his hands were still deft, his love for the earth still vibrant. She held a well-worn copy of her first novel, its pages soft and familiar beneath her fingertips. He looked up, caught her eye, and smiled, a smile that still sent a flutter through her heart. He walked over, brushed a kiss on her forehead, and settled beside her, their knees touching. "What are you reading, my love?" he asked, his voice a gentle rumble. "Just reminiscing," she replied, patting the book. "Remember when I thought stories only lived on pages?" He chuckled softly. "And I thought gardens only grew from seeds." He took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers, the moonstone ring on her finger still catching the fading light, a silent testament to a lifetime of shared moments. "We learned, didn't we, that stories grow in hearts, and gardens bloom in love." Alara leaned her head on his shoulder, the familiar comfort a perfect melody. The air was filled with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and the quiet hum of crickets. The stars began to dot the velvet sky, countless tiny pinpricks of light, each one a whispered secret, a shared dream. She closed her eyes, a contented sigh escaping her lips. Their story, once just beginning, had unfolded beautifully, brick by gentle brick, word by heartfelt word, into a magnificent living masterpiece. And as she drifted closer to sleep, nestled securely beside the man who was her truest home, Alara knew, with a quiet certainty that transcended all words, that their story was, and always would be, their most cherished work of art. The end.